Transformers Revenge of the Fallen is probably the most dumb action film of them all, with no real meaning behind it.
Perhaps there is no moral to this story.
Exactly! It's just a bunch of stuff that happened.
So let's give it reason. In a rewrite. Following up on my first rewrite, this is Revenge of the Fallen, another take. Much like the first film, it opens up with Optimus giving a monologue, saying long before the Great War, before Autobots and Decepticons, there was Primus and Unicron, two opposing and opposite gods that took the form of planets. Unicron sent an army known as the Quintessons to attack Primus, but Primus created the 12 original Transformers. Along with a repentive Quintesson, they formed the 13 original Primes. After millennia of war, they banished the Quintessons Unicron and ruled the Cybertronians as demigod kings. Cybertron grew and grew, and they tried expanding their realm, using sun harvesters to collect energon from the planet's suns. Their one rule in this was never harvest a system that had life in it, but one of them, known as Megatron, betrayed this rule and tried harvesting a world with life. He was then on known as the Fallen, and this started the Prime War. Eventually they ended up killing him and stopping the harvester. The war was costly, and the 12 decided that they were too powerful to ever let this happen again, so they all chose to become one with the Matrix, a device similar to the Cube, and keep their hands out of the affairs of the mortal bots. Starting the lineage of mortal primes, leading till today. And it pulls out, and Optimus is telling the UN Security Council all this on video screens at Outpost Metroplex. And Optimus laments that Cybertron's gone now that the cube is destroyed, but he's hopeful that Earth will be a welcoming new home for them. And then just as he says that, a new Cybertronian ship arrives, dropping off some new Autobots. The Wreckers Topspin, Leadfoot, Roadbuster, Twin Twist, and Steeljaw, which leads into a montage of even more bots arriving, set to a Linkin Park cover of Transformers theme, and we got a whole new line of toys to show off. And just in time, because 2 years after the events of the first film in Shanghai, China, the film picks up with Nest and the Autobots hunting for the Decepticons. Instead of finding Scavenger, they find Lugnut and a bunch of Vehicons searching for a bunch of rubble for something. Lugnut says all hail Megatron and creates a giant explosion and tries flying away. The Vehicons drive away. One of them's taken out by RC and two new fembots, Alita 1 and Chromia, who kind of parallel Optimus and Ironhide. And then, back at Metroplex, they get cheered on by some Autobots watching them. The cheerful but shy Moonracer and the serious Lancer. Another Vehicon's taken out by Blur. This design looks really cool, but it does fit Blur with the wheel legs rather than Sideswipe. And as a G1 reference, he can still be played by the Micro Machines guy, because no one can talk as fast as he can. And another Vehicon manages to get away because it gets pursued by the brothers Sideswipe and Sunstreaker, who blame each other for it and the fact that they have to share an alt mode and they start a fight with each other. Meanwhile, the old man Autobot Stratosphere drops Optimus out and he lands on top of Lugnut. He does some damage, but Lugnut tosses him off, but Optimus has some Autobot brand parachutes and manages to shoot his wings off, causing Lugnut to crash. Optimus, Ironhide, and a bunch of Nest agents surround him. Lugnut, now armless and trapped in some rubble, says that the Autobots are doomed once the glorious Megatron gets what he's looking for, and that the Fallen shall rise again. Instead of getting executed, they arrest him and take him back to Metroplex. Meanwhile, the Witwickies, Spike's going away to college. His mom's a wreck about it, but Sparkplug is glad about it. But Spike doesn't want to go to college. But Sparkplug tells him Spike to actually go to college and have a better life than him. But Spike's still upset because he wants to work with Nest and the Autobots. Maybe as a mechanic like he used to with those military guys. Sparkplug replies with, "That was another more dangerous time and I don't want you being too involved with the Autobots and Nest any more than you already are being friends with Chip and Bumblebee. I don't want to see you hurt." The family makes their way to college, with Sam driving B, and he's still upset, lamenting to him that he doesn't want to have just a normal life. But B says that Sparkplug has somewhat of a point. The Autobots do live a kind of dangerous life. But Spike says something like he can handle it, he wants to just help. He doesn't really care if he gets hurt doing it. He picks up his old jacket from the first film that's sitting in the passenger seat and a little piece of the Allspark drops out, and he picks it up, and it zooms into his eyes, and he just kind of bug eyes and zones out. Meanwhile, at base Metroplex, Arizona, it's came a long way from an abandoned missile silo, with many of the Nest agents referring to it as Autobot City. The twins get scolded by Alita 1 for letting the Vehicon escape. The two try arguing that each other let them lose and they need to have their own separate vehicle modes. And Alita says it will get them to shut up, they can choose from the Nest parking lot, and they choose 2 Chevy Sparks. And yeah, if it hasn't been obvious, Sideswipe and Sunstreaker are going to be the skids and mudflap for the film. But hopefully we can do something better. Like the start, they don't speak in such stereotypical language. They're not fraternal twins, but they definitely do get into a lot of fights and have a lot in common, showing that they are brothers. They lock Lugnut away and Optimus shows up. Director Meering, the head of Nest, asks for the sweet lowdown, and Optimus explains, like all the other apprehended Decepticons they got for the last 2 years, they are looking for something, but now they have a lead that they might be working with the Fallen. She asks who the Fallen is. He explains off-screen as we cut to the Arctic, because the Decepticons have been looking all over the globe for the Matrix. Here we have a group of construction cons who are getting led by Starscream.
This drill isn't going fast enough! Speed it up, you imbecile!
Instead of finding the Matrix, they find an old bot frozen named Jetfire. Back with the humans, they made it to the college, and it turns out that Carly's attending the same classes that Spike is. Chip is also there in a wheelchair because his legs were broken in the last film. He's not going to attend the college because he took up a job as IT for Nest. He was just here to hang with Carly and his friend Leo, who turns out to be Spike's roommate. Back with the cons, they try to revive Jetfire. And after some confusion, as soon as he wakes up, the Gentle Giant explains why he was in the ice. That 100-something years ago, him, Megatron, and Shockwave were looking for the cube and made it to Earth. Megatron scouted out and looked for the cube, just as the Nemesis 1 was getting attacked by a mysterious group of Autobots. During the fight, Jetfire was the only one who survived as the other two crashed into the ocean. Jetfire looked for Megatron, but the two froze over in the Arctic, miles away from each other, and Starscream welcomes him back to the winning side. Meanwhile, the humans are going to an orientation party, just as Spike starts kind of freaking out and drawing Cybertronian glyphs all over the place. And Soundwave informs Megatron there's been an energy surge similar to the Allspark on Earth. Megatron asks for a group to be sent out to investigate. He tells the Fallen about this, and the Fallen says that the cube is worthless now and they need to find the Matrix and defeat the last Prime, and they shouldn't trust Jetfire. Megatron says all will happen in time. The next day, Spike has a similar freak out in class, so his friends take him for a joyride to get his mind off everything. But then Nest detects a bunch of Decepticon signatures heading towards them. They get picked up by a helicopter Vehicon. Megatron holds him down and demands to have the shard. He keeps trying to explain he doesn't have something, and he then starts gibbering off again. Megatron immediately recognizes it as Cybertronian and tries to decipher what he says with a human accent. Just as the Autobots crash in, and we get the fight scene in the forest, and pull the camera back so we can actually see the action. Optimus tries fighting off the construction cons, but there's too many of them, and they keep just railing on him. Megatron shoots a blast into his back, and he collapses to the ground. The Fallen senses this, and he's like, yes. Nest arrives, and the rest of the Autobots arrive. Megatron says they got what they were looking for, and they open up a ground bridge and escape. Coming back to base Metroplex, they drop off the body of Optimus. Wheeljack and Ratchet look over him, but then they kind of look away knowingly, and yeah, he's dead. There's a quiet moment where everyone's upset about this, and Spike tries climbing on Optimus and cries. And then all of a sudden, there's a bunch of echoes and heavenly light, and Optimus awakens to the voice of Kevin Michael Richardson as Micronus Prime, the Guide of the Dead, who refers to Optimus as Orion Pax, and introduces himself. Open up a portal. He explains, like every bot, con, and prime, that they must go through some trials before they can enter and be one with the Matrix. If he fails his trials, he'll be tossed into the pit. So he opens a new portal and says, your trials await. Optimus enters. His first trial is one of strength. He meets a bunch of random bots, who then all form up into Nexus Prime. Optimus is in somewhat disbelief because he thought that combiners were just a myth. Micronus explains that long ago they used to be very common until they were banned by Nova Prime for being too powerful and expensive. And then he shifts into Onyx Prime and he gets played by Gary Chalk for a reference. He tells Optimus that combiners are some of the most powerful transformers that ever were created, using the combined strength of several sparks into one. How does he expect to fight this? Then it cuts back to the humans. Then Marion says, "What's the sweet lowdown?" And Ratchet has to report that Optimus has passed to the Matrix. And then Spike says, "Matrix? That sounds familiar." Ratchet wonders how he knows about the Matrix, and Marion wonders why he's here.
I know his name. I want to know who gave him clearance.
Who gave me clearance? How about Optimus Prime when he touched down in suburbia looking for my house?
This is the National Intelligence Director.
Hi.
Disrespecting a federal officer. Maybe that'll get you somewhere. What is this, like a date?
She knows all about the Autobots, okay? She knows Bumblebee.
Hey, I have an idea. How about we get back to the important topics, like the fact that I almost had my face cut off by a Decepticon?
Spike then writes down all the Cybertronian glyphs he keeps seeing, and Ratchet immediately recognizes it as a map somewhere to the Matrix. He's in disbelief, and he's like, "Oh, it turns out everything was real." Ironhide says that the Matrix could be used to revive Prime. Leo 1 steps forward and says that she shall lead the mission to recover it. Ironhide says that he should lead the mission because he was Optimus' second in command after Jazz. Lolita says this is a mission where time is not on her side. This is probably what the Decepticons are also looking for, so they need to retrieve the Matrix as quick as possible. Chromia agrees, but then Bumblebee steps forward and says that he should be the leader, suggesting that Lolita and Ironhide are too valuable to lose and should stay back at the base, especially after they just lost Optimus. And Chip and Ratchet really need to get the ground bridge working. They agree, and Bumblebee takes RC, Blur, Wheeljack, Moonracer, the twins, and Lancer. Moonracer is kind of too scared to go on the mission, but Lancer convinces her to go anyway, because they might need a backup tech person in case Wheeljack gets compromised. They grab a bunch of Nest agents, including some of the actual characters, Spike and Carly, and we head out. Meanwhile, in the Sahara, Megatron was able to decipher sort of what Spike said. And even the Fallen showed up, and he kind of recognizes this place. And he uses his powers, and he sandblasts, and there's a Cybertronian grave. Because this is long before they had to recycle. And then he goes into one of the graves, and he rips out a part from one. Megatron is confused what it is, but then the Fallen says, "This is a combiner's power core. With it, multiple sparks can form into one greater creature." Megatron's pleased by this and commands the construction cons to excavate the graves and look for the combiner cores. And he tells the scientists, once they're done, to install the combiner cores within the construction cons. Back with Optimus, he's having kind of a hard time dealing with Nexus. Onyx gives him a hint that he should think strategically. Every one of his limbs is someone else. Optimus takes this as a no to then stop brute forcing it and focus his attacks towards the legs. He's able to cut off one of the legs, and because the combiner becomes unstable, it all falls apart. Onyx and Nexus fade away back into Micronus, and he congratulates Optimus, but he still failed the test because he had to use a hint. Which leads into the next trial. And then Micronus fades into Vector Prime, the prime of time and space, with the cool, calming voice of Michael York. The next trial is one of wisdom, seeing how much Optimus actually knows and is willing to believe it. Optimus goes into repeating the opening monologue, but Vector interrupts and says that yes, Unicron and Primus are real, but the full story is a little different. The two cosmic beings then did fight each other until they exhausted each other. Their energy was then absorbed into different planets. Unicron was never heard from again, and Primus grew into a lush planet.
Now it came to pass, in the days when the judges ruled,
Cybertron at one point was a living planet with tons of natural life on it, until the Quintessons came. Optimus interrupts saying they're the spawn of Unicron, but Vector says not at all actually. They were completely unrelated to Unicron. That was nearly stories made to demonize them. They were only cephalopods from another world, very advanced with technology and cybernetics, ruled by many-faced judges. The Quintessons discovered Cybertron and destroyed all life on it, turning it into, well, Cybertron, using the planet as a massive factory for their robot slaves. Eventually, they created the Allspark to give life to some of these creatures to start programming and building themselves. Quintessons were massive hedonists who would just destroy robots randomly just to do it and force them to fight in gladiator arenas. Eventually, Primus was able to use his energy to access Vector Sigma, their supercomputer. He was able to build the 12 original Primes, giving some of his energy to their sparks, as well as a Quintesson who hated the mistreatment of the Transformers. Together, they became the 13, and together they led the Transformers into revolt against the Quintessons, driving them off-world. But Vector Sigma was destroyed, and his energies became known as the Plasma Energy Chamber. They never saw the Quintessons again, so instead the planet became prosperous. Optimus picks up knowing about the Sun Harvesters and how one of them betrayed the rest. Vector congratulates Optimus, but he also notes that it did happen a few times before they put their foot down. You know, the first time it's like, okay, plausible deniability, you didn't see them, they were kind of small creatures. Second time, okay, that's a little unforgivable, dude, you need to stop that. But thanks for the colony anyway. Third time, okay, we gotta stop him. The world this happened on was actually Earth. He argued that it was actually a blessing to have lesser creatures sacrifice themselves for the greater good of Cybertron. He was branded the Fallen, and this started the Prime Wars. He was eventually defeated, but thanks to all their powers and a little bit of backfire from shutting down the Sun Harvester, they turned the Sahara jungle into the Sahara Desert. Optimus noting that this is where the Primes chose to enter the Matrix. And Vector says, right you are. But two chose to be left behind, Solomus and Alchemist Prime. They hid the Matrix away somewhere on that world and abandoned it. Soon all Sun Harvesters were dismantled and abandoned for the greater good of species everywhere. The two eventually stepped down and let the Common Bot become new Primes, starting a Cybertronian Golden Era. But eventually, as time went on, the Transformers became more and more like the Quintessons, which eventually started the Great War. Optimus is just flabbergasted about how much they didn't know. And then Vector becomes Alpha Trion. He explains that much of the history was exaggerated or demonized others to prove their agenda. And then he fades into Megatronus and he says, just take me for example. Prime sees that Megatronus and he thinks he's the Fallen and he tries attacking him. But Megatronus backs him off. Megatronus says he fails his trial because he never critically thought about this. Because Megatronus is not the Fallen. It's Liege Maximo. He survived the Prime War and hid in the shadows, being able to rewrite histories and demonize Megatronus, playing all the blame and all the things he did off to him, and everyone just fell for it. He also ended up corrupting a certain revolutionary gladiator. He had all the right intentions and right ideas, but the Fallen corrupted him to be power-hungry and mad. And Optimus was like, Megatron was tricked. We all were tricked. He notes that Maximo cannot get the Matrix, and he demands to speak with Solomus to know where the Matrix is. Then he becomes Alpha Trion again, and he says that's kind of impossible. Optimus asks why, and that's because Solomus chose to be reincarnated instead of joining the One. And along with Alchemist, their sparks continue on as new beings, Orion Pax and Jetfire. Optimus Prime is the 13th Prime.